Our next episode is called The Defector. It's episode number 58 of Star Trek The Next Generation, and it originally aired on December 30th, 1989, the last TNG episode of the 80s, mind you, and it was written by Ron Moore and directed by Robert Scherer. And this episode begins after the Enterprise, their sensors pick up an unidentified craft in the neutral zone. So the Enterprise goes out to investigate, and they find a Romulan warbird chasing a small Romulan scout ship. Now, because of the pilot's pleas for asylum, Picard extends the Enterprise's shields around the craft, and the warbird actually leaves. They were expecting a fight, but for some reason they just leave. Now, the Defector, whose real name is Admiral Jarok, claims that the Romulans have created a hidden base on Nelvana 3 in the neutral zone, and he says they're massing for an attack and wants the Enterprise to enter the neutral zone to destroy the base. Now, Picard resists Jarok's suggestion, knowing that to enter the neutral zone would violate the Federation-Romulan treaty, and instead Picard launches a probe. Now, as the probe drops into orbit around Nelvana 3, it senses the types of substance disturbance that comes from cloaked warbirds. But still, Picard is not convinced, and he really grills Admiral Jarok further, just for real proof and evidence. Now finally, after Jarok supplies the location, strengths, and tactical plans of the Romulan fleet, Picard decides it's time to act. Now at Nelvana 3, the Enterprise finds nothing, and the Romulans had suspected the loyalty of Jarok and fed him false information for months, waiting to see his reaction. And Picard realizes this and orders a hasty retreat. But as the Enterprise swings around to warp to Federation space, two Romulan warbirds appear, and they demand that the Enterprise surrender. And of course Picard refuses, and just before the warbirds destroy the Enterprise, or about to even open fire, 3 Klingon warships decloak. And that evens the odds, of course. And suddenly facing an opposing force of equal or greater strength, the Romulans allow the Enterprise to leave. Now Jarok, realizing that this was all for nothing, that he defected for nothing because he was fed false information, and he was a family man, mind you, and had to face the idea that he was never going to see his children again, feeling that that was all for nothing, he commits suicide at the end of the episode. And Picard muses, hopefully there will be more people with the courage of Jarok to defect, and perhaps at some time there will actually be peace between the Federation and the Romulan Empire. And that is the end of the episode. Now, this was actually the second offering by Ron Moore, after his first script called The Bonding, which I reviewed earlier in the season, was a success. This one was pitched to the producers, and they really liked this one as well. And on the strength of the success of The Defector, Ron Moore was actually offered a staff job as story editor, and from then on he becomes an integral part of the behind the scenes on Star Trek The Next Generation. And Moore says that they really like the idea of having this sort of, basically a Cuban Missile Crisis at the neutral zone. And he wrote the first draft and was involved in the rewrite, and about 2 weeks later, after the show was put to bed, as they say, they had an opening on the staff, and they called him up and said, "Would you like to come aboard?" And he obviously really wanted to do this. So, kudos to Ron Moore for, I just love his story in the background, for him to at first be a huge Star Trek fan, and for his girlfriend to allow him to have basically a tour of the set, and for him to pitch his first script, The Bonding, that way, and for that to work out, and then a year later to be on staff. It's just a great story, and I think it's an encouragement for people who really enjoy writing, that, you know, sometimes if you're persistent and really enjoy something, it does work out that way. So I love that story, and I think Ron Moore is one of the best writers on staff too. Now, and another interesting thing that I would like to mention on this, at the very beginning of the episode, which I didn't reveal in the plot, there is a holodeck scene, and Data is rehearsing a play and Picard is watching. But in addition to the regular role of Picard, Patrick Stewart also plays the role of the holodeck character of Michael Williams from Shakespeare's Henry V, which is Act 4, Scene 1, in those opening scenes there. And Stewart actually requested this out of his love for Shakespeare. Stewart is a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and he was really in his element there, so a chance to do that on Star Trek, I think, was really a thrill for him. And Stewart uses a regional English accent from the Black Country, which is an area between Birmingham and Wolverhampton, actually, and his version is of the strong Gornal variety of Black Country accent. So, and he really does that well. I kind of marveled when I watched that first scene, how he changes his voice up. And great makeup job, too. I don't know how many of you on the first time around noticed that that was also Patrick Stewart, but I was really impressed with that opening part. And this episode in general is quite a strong one, I must say. I think the acting was great, and the idea of a Romulan defecting in general was an interesting one. And first, I should mention, he goes under a different name. He's called a sub-commander in that in the early part, and he doesn't want to reveal that he's actually an admiral. And we learn later that he is an admiral, and of course the Enterprise crew kind of doubts, well, is this guy, legit if he's not even being honest about who he is? But it turns out he really is. He is trying to do this for the good of the Romulan Empire. He doesn't hate the Romulan Empire, he just wants what's best for it, and he's willing to, he believes in it so strongly that he's willing to give up being with those he loves, including his children. So, really strong there. And beyond that, I think just the performances by the rest of the cast. It's always great to see Commander Tomalak back in there, as I had mentioned, really being a big fan of Andreas from the other episode called The Enemy, and we do see Tomalak in the future too. So great to see him. And just another strong episode by Ron Moore, and he's very deserving of being on staff after this. So comment below what you guys feel about this episode. I really liked it. Hope you guys did too. See you guys next time, and we'll go from there. Thanks.